All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm saying welcome to you, but what I should also say is what an honor it is to be in your community. As a visitor, I feel very connected. In this most strange of years, we've done, I think, everything we possibly could, and so much of it has worked. Davening this morning felt really gorgeous, and I want to thank you for being part of it. That energy can't be an individual experience. That's not how that would have worked. And so for everything that we're bringing to each other, thank you. I don't know what Yontif would be like without you. So here we go. What I wanted to do is jump into a conversation based tangentially on some of our davening that we're about to do. Musaf has three themes, the Amidah does. And those themes touch on humility, right? Malchuyot, we're going to do the Great Aleinu. And we also do Zichronot, these memories, and shofarot, which are the sounds of shofar as refracted through different texts. Each one of those becomes an anthology if you follow along in the machzor as we're davening. But the experience at Sinai itself was one that I wanted to focus on because it's an extraordinary moment in our consciousness, and we daven around it. Shofarot, some of them happened at Sinai, but we don't know who is doing the blowing. We learned this together for those who were in the class that I taught before Rosh Hashanah, about a week before. And in Zichronot, in these memories, we point to different things that happened in our archetypal biblical history. But the question is, what does it mean? What does it mean to stand at Sinai? What does it mean to remember all of these things? And especially to be in this place where we are now, it's a very strange moment. What does memory mean? What am I remembering? So I thought we could look at a few images visually, some art images that I'll share through a screen share, and then do a little bit of text. So you're welcome to be unmuted at any point. And I'm going to share some of my screen now and ask you to think about what you see on the screen. And this is the interactive part of today's conversation, although all of it could be interactive. And I'll ask whoever is willing to unmute yourself and say, this is what I see. Really looking for what you see on the screen. All right, so this is one image of Sinai. What do you see? You have to unmute in order to be heard. In the absence of anyone jumping in, I'll tell you what I see, but I'm more curious about your eyes.
People reaching for Sinai, reaching for the commandments or for the Torah.
Thank you, Mindy. Yeah, there's a reaching, there's an active part of what you see in those hands. And if you look closely, I'm not sure if it's clear on your screen, the hands are multi-textured. They're not like one color. And so even the artist, I think, is trying to depict a way of reaching toward Sinai, okay? It's a beautiful beginning. What else do you see? Because there are some really particular things about what Sinai might be in your imagination and what the artist saw. So what else do you see here?
I see Torah without Moshe. You know, you expect to see him bringing it down, but it's there on its own.
Thank you, Joy. Yeah, so what you see is a sort of, there's no intervention, there's no intermediary, right? Our hands are reaching straight for Torah, and I'll just prompt one other observation. If you look closely, what's holding the Torah up, right? Like, not only is there nothing intervening, Moses isn't there, Torah is like right there hanging in the air, waiting to be plucked, or maybe it's a little bit out of reach. There's a lot of interpretation involved in how we see this. And how about the Torah itself? Anyone notice something in particular about the Torah? If you envision the Torah as given at Sinai, right, which you can have your own theological speculation about, your own approach to Torah, totally. But in the imaginative world that we have, is this the Torah that we imagine at Sinai, or is there something strange about the artist's image of Torah in this moment? What do you see?
It's scrolls and not tablets.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah. Like, this didn't exist. This could not have been the Torah. If Torah was given physically at Sinai, whatever that could have meant, I mean, we don't really know. It certainly didn't look like this. This is parchment and ink and modern depiction of a scroll, and it's an ashkenormative, it's a fun word, it's an ashkenormative notion of Torah, because the Sephardic Torah looks different and Ashkenazi Torah looks different, which are both different than tablets and engraving, which is how the Torah describes the Torah being given. So this is quite an interesting way to begin. All right. So
Can I just add something?
Of course, Marcy.
I think that the Torah is so stark just in terms of the lines. It's parallel to the sides and the top, and the hands are much more real, like the angles and the...
Yes. It's good, Marcy. Thank you for pointing exactly that, meaning the reality, the realistic depictions of hands. Look at this image, which I chose for its contrast and because everyone deserves a little bit of sweetness on these days, right? Look at how sweet this image is. It's so different. It's a different kind of artist. You know, what do you see that's markedly different here?
Crayon people.
Say that again?
Color.
Color. Thank you, Rita. Right. This is a very colorful image. And popsicle people. It's so cute. It makes me so happy to look at. Now, I've been a teacher of young children before. Young children actually don't line up popsicles as neatly as this. So the teacher has to have been involved, you know, just to some extent. Right. But it's so sweet. The popsicles are there at the mountain. And what do you notice about the Torah itself?
Tablets.
Tablets. So now we're back to an image that maybe was more representative of something that happened at Sinai. Again, we don't know, but maybe. And the absence of Moses, as we pointed out before, that's still here. Right? So there's so much interesting stuff. I have one more image to show you before we look at some text, but I want to give you some space to offer your thoughts if you have them.
Rabbi, can we go back to the first picture?
You bet.
Yeah, I mean, there's an image of you there. There's a man with glasses and a beard.
Really? I think it's because we're screen sharing. I don't know if that's...
No, there are people. There's a person on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I see images too in the mountain.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think there's a person on the right side in between the hand, but I can't see.
I don't know that I saw that when I chose the image. I'll tell you, interesting that you make that observation. If I were to sum up one of the points I was planning on making, it's that we see ourselves in Sinai. Right. It's that so much of what we see is based on who's doing the looking. So Rita, it's so fascinating that you saw that. I didn't see that, but it sort of embodies the point I wanted to make.
You know, but with this one, with the hands, the people are involved. We're reaching for it. We want it. And with the stick people, we're really not. We're looking forward at the audience looking at the picture, and we're not involved at all looking at the Torah.
That's fascinating. And I'll use that as a connection. Just remember that you said that the popsicle stick, that we are looking at the audience, but not at the Torah itself. Remember that when we look at the final image. Mark, you wanted to jump in.
Yes, I'm just reminded there is a piyut for Shavuot, which describes the Torah as received on parchment, written in ink, in Assyrian script. Tab Ashuri. Which is the image of which is the first image that we saw.
Interesting. Yeah, because you can see the parchment in that. Although, right, as you're pointing out, I think
that's the authentic Torah.
Right, I think with humor, you're pointing it out too.
I'm pointing it out with a little bit of humor,
yeah,
but also with a reference to a traditional text.
Yes. I think what's interesting about that to me is that the traditional text is itself imposing on ancient history a modern form.
Of course.
Right? So what we see and how urgently we see it, right? The authenticity that I recognize must have been how it was. It's so interesting. So I'm going to give you one new image, everyone, and then we're going to look at a few texts. This image that should come right now. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. I think I can. There you go. So this, I would describe, just, my eyes, see it as a more traditional notion of what happened at Sinai. I don't know that that's fair, and that might be a little bit, on the nose with when images of authenticity are measured. But there are differences here, and You know, from a classic art observer standpoint, you've got the three parts of the image. I'm going to draw with a line here. I shouldn't draw, it's Yantif and Shabbos, so I'll just point with a pointer. Isn't it interesting how to figure out how to keep Shabbos and Yantif when we're like doing these bizarre new things? So anyway, so I'm not going to draw, but I will point with my cursor, which is somehow different in my mind than drawing. All right, so you've got the upper ground here, which is above Sinai. Then you've got this line between Sinai and the people. Right? And the space between the people and Sinai is reflected in the biblical text itself, but we have all sorts of stuff happening here, and this is a lot less pleasant than popsicles, to say the least. Right? So I'll just ask you for a few observations of this image. And Erica, I think we haven't met before, but I think that's
Right.
you. Yeah. When you pointed out which way the popsicle sticks were facing, that's very different from here, because where's everyone facing?
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that could grab your attention, which is the most climactic moment in human history.
How could it be a photo? I don't know.
Right?
It looks like a photograph.
Yeah, so what do you see?
No, they're not all looking. Some of them are looking down. Some of them you can see from the tilt of their head that they're in awe. Some of them are afraid. I mean, the backhead image actually shows a lot of what people are doing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, if you look at the bottom right part, I'm sort of circling with my cursor, this one image looking away and down. If you've ever done tachanun, where sort of you hide your face out of awe and humility and overwhelmed and perhaps other emotions, this is a very interesting one here.
Yeah. Now, this is the mountain suspended.
Yes, right? What's happening up here is so incredible. In fact, if you look at the biblical text, which we're going to start with in a second, it's not a calm image, right? I remember the midrash I learned as a child. Why was Mount Sinai chosen as a place where Torah would be given, right? One mountain, you know, got itself all gussied up and said, I'm the most beautiful mountain. Torah should be given on me. One said, I'm the tallest mountain. One said, I'm the lushest mountain. Mount Sinai didn't claim anything for itself, for herself, and that's why it was chosen, because of humility. That's the Midrash speaking. It's a gorgeous teaching, but it doesn't look like this, right?
The other thing that's weird is there's that green area from a little bit in front of where you were pointing earlier. It's like a no yards area, you know, so why is there that one space? It's like a rock concert would never have that little green area. Back up to the right. Yeah, there.
Oh,
like,
here.
why is there that? You know, are those going to be the Kohanim? Is that like, why is that area there?
I think it's space. God has suspended the mountain over the people and saying, either you'll take the Torah or I'm going to drop this on you.
It's the 6 feet they have to be separated by.
I was going to say the same thing. Where's the mask?
Well, by the way,
I think that space is a mosh pit.
Is this picture cropped at all? Is there more to the scene than what we're seeing?
no, that's a good question. This is pretty much the image that the artist created. It's just maybe made a little bit neater because I took out the outer frame, but this is pretty much the whole thing.
I mean, the question, it's difficult seeing it on the screen. The bright two pieces, is that supposed to be the Torah at the top?
Good.
Center?
Good. Well, what's absent here, and that's actually a great way of pointing to it. What's absent here is the Torah itself, is the tablets. And at Mount Sinai, if you might imagine, let me go straight to the text itself, so I can answer from within the words. At Sinai itself, there is something really remarkable about what's not visible. Let me bring it to your screen. Can everyone see the text now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the very top text here in Exodus, right? Vayhi vayom hashlishi biyot haboker v'yo kolot uvrakim v'anan kaved al hahar v'kol shuv. The English, which is the JPS translation, straight from Sepharia. And it came to pass on the third day when it was morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, a voice of the shofar exceeding loud, and all the people that were in the camp trembled. Moshe brought forth the people out of the camp to meet God, and there they stood, b'tachtit ahar, at the nether part of the mount. So this has a lot of what we've been talking about and a lot of what we've been asking about. Why would there have been distance between the mountain and the people? Well, who wants to get close to that? Is it a humble mountain? No, it's a volcano in a desert. How does it feel to be present there? It doesn't feel so sweet, even though we have these nice, sweet popsicle images of Torah. This is scary. This is a big deal. I don't know if I can handle this. And if there's a thick cloud at the top of the mountain, what can't I see? The top. I can't see what's going on. What a powerful thing to realize that in the Torah's depiction of the giving of the Torah, what's happening can't be seen, and it's being described even by the narrator from a distance. The top of the mountain was covered with smoke and cloud. And anan, cloud in the Torah is usually a key phrase for God's presence.
Right, right.
So all I can see using the verses, right, in my mind's eye, there's a mountain, there's noise, and I'm scared, I'm trembling, and Moshe wants me to go close.
If you
I don't know
go
what
back,
I'm going to do about that.
if you go back to the popsicle picture,
Yeah.
There's a sequence between that and the second and the third picture where there's, I mean, the people were like children, and you know, they're being led to a place that they know nothing about, and naive, and then they get there and they see that it's something frightening and awesome, and it's their real exposure.
So let me ask this question, given that observation, Mindy. We're supposed to remember this today. We're supposed to remember standing at the mountain, even though Shavuot is the holiday that we've associated with standing at the mountain, and we read Parshat Yitro later in our year. Rosh Hashanah calls us during Zichronot to remember all these different moments, calls God to remember all these moments, and Shofarot itself points to the sound of the shofar in all moments of history, especially at Har Sinai. So I want to ask us, Mindy, based on your language, can you remember what it was to be so close and to be so trembling because the raw exposure was just too much? Now, I'm not saying, I'm not pointing to a virus, I'm not pointing to anything in particular, but reality is very intense and always has been, especially when we lead a sacred life. So when we look at what these texts are continuing to suggest, by the way, those are my kids. Glad to share them with you. When you say at the end of the first text here, they stood b'tachtit har, the nether part of the mount, Mark sort of jumped the gun and shared one of the interpretations we're going to look at. What does it mean they stood at the bottom of the mountain? Rashi says here, according to the simple rendering, they stood at the base, at the foot of the mountain. But its midrashic interpretation is that the mountain was uprooted from its place and turned over them like a gigit. And one translation is like a beer barrel. Another one says like a cask. Another one says actually like a bath. A beer barrel could have been a bath at certain points in history. But one of the images that I didn't share yet, I'm about to share now, is not as pleasant. Look at this one. All of these are artists' depictions of what happens at the mountain. I don't know which one I remember because I wasn't there, but I do know I've read all these texts, and when the text tells me, remember this, all these images come flooding in. The popsicle sticks I used when I was a kid, the midrash of a humble mountain, the volcano when I actually looked at the text, and then the midrash's suggestion of this. So I want to ask you, if this were your memory of Sinai, would you want to go back? Right? I mean, I'm seeing Erica sort of say, no.
That is bizarre.
So we're going to see a progression in a few minutes of this idea into something, if not more palatable, then a little bit more textured. But why would the rabbis incorporate this kind of image into their imagined memory of Sinai? What's the use of this? I mean positive use. What's the positive use of this?
Well, I guess you're alone.
Right. Marcy, you're
That
Go ahead.
that everybody has the opportunity to make that decision.
Right.
And, you know, sort of seeing one person out of the crowd, it becomes, I think, more personal. And what I also like is that what I didn't like about the popsicles is that they didn't have any agency. They were standing there. They didn't have hands. And I'd like to remember it, you know, being able to make a choice and having the ability to interact.
I appreciate that so much. So not only having a choice, pointing out that that choice happens on the individual level. We're in community, but each of us is called to have a specific relationship and choice with covenant, with our people, with God, with Torah. The place of the individual when it comes to Jewish prayer, when it comes to davening, it's so interesting. We don't have so much of that. So much of even the individualized experience is phrased in the plural, especially, right? Asham nu, Bagad nu, Gazal nu, we'll do on Yom Kippur. It happens in plural, even these existential personal moments. So I appreciate the way you just phrased that.
Yeah, so I think the popsicles were showing joy and a sense of community, and being together and receiving the Torah.
Well, so you've answered the popsicle question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but would you have a way of understanding this image that I still have in front of us? Or is this not, can this not connect to the Sinai moment for you?
Yeah. To me, this shows awe. It's something awesome that's above.
Yeah.
Something large, awesome, but also dark, which is kind of fearful, a little bit.
I'm identifying with the person standing at the bottom of the picture. And to me, if that were I would be saying, why me?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I so appreciate you saying that.
I'm comfortable with this one totally. My whole thing about Sinai was that we were all there together as a community, as Jews, as having all of the support and love and everything that we experience that we need to be together with. And for me, this is solitary, alone, by yourself, and so not what I ever pictured myself.
Well, let me only wish you fulfillment of what you are wishing for yourself, right? This image is one artist's interpretation of a moment, and whereas it can have some beauty to it, right? There are ways of finding something meaningful here. It is a pressurized relationship with the divine and with tradition and with our holy moments that not all of us see as positive. So if you can pull something positive from it, that's gorgeous. And if this is a pushing away, it's one of the reasons I don't keep this image up for very long. Zach, I think Zachary's hand was up, I think.
All right, so we got Zachary and Zachary's mother. I'm the mother. But I think all the images speak to me because I think about Musaf as it's our three different types of our relationship with God. There's the Malchio, which is God is everything and we are nothing. He's all powerful, and it kind of nullifies us. And that's what the last image is. We're just like so little, and God is everything. And I see the popsicle people as sort of the shofarot, the redemption. I think of shofarot as finally we get to smile. We finally made it to that place of sort of a relative partnership, and there's some redemption. And I see Zichronot as sort of there's this process that we go through towards this partnership and happiness. But we start off in that place with God is all powerful and we are so scared. So I think they're all, I see the Musaf in all of them.
I appreciate that.
With my mom on the last one, sorry mom, on the one with the mountain upside down, I think that one of the things that it shows, even though it looks like the person is so little is that person has to do, like, it almost seems like they should be reaching up towards the Torah, as if the Torah was on the tip of the mountain and they have to go get it. And that kind of brings to mind, it's not just the Jewish people accepting the Torah, it's you have to make a choice to accept the Torah. You have to make a choice to belong to the Jewish people. You have to make a choice to reach out and grab it, so to speak.
I got to tell you, Zachary, I've taught this text a million times and shared this image quite a few times. I've never heard such a suggestion. I love that one. I love that. I might even like this image a little bit more because of you. Peter, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just because I liked when you asked about, I mean, we were all at Sinai and yet I wasn't at Sinai, so both are true in some ways. And similarly here, I was trying to think, when was I there in the best way I can imagine? And I think about the birth of my children, and I see in that moment a kind of a miracle that I'm watching. And yet at the same time, they are pointing at me, as this mountain seems to be pointing at this individual, that I have a responsibility, an incredibly massive responsibility alongside the honoring of being able to witness a miracle. The two go hand in hand. And I think we're both there together. We're also there not alone, but with an individual responsibility. That's what this picture seems to say to me.
That's beautiful. And to connect it to the birth of your child, your children, I think not so dissimilar from what Zachary just pointed out, right? Here's this really massive thing that's pointing to you, saying, do you accept? I mean, here's the biggest gift, which is not an easy thing to hold and care for well, right? But I'm offering it to you. It's up to you now, right? And the answer, you know, as a parent also, I'm crying thinking with you about that moment, right? Of course. Oh my God, please, please, please overwhelm me. Give me what I can't handle. I need this. I want this. I want you. And if Torah is that, and it's over our head, meaning I'm not just saying at the base of the experience, I'm actually right under it, but I better be ready to catch. And one of the ways that I want us to think about this as we move back into the text and move forward in the text itself is what it is to catch this holy thing. Are we strong enough? How can we become strong enough? And ultimately, one of the reasons that I feel, at least I think I feel the way Erica was describing before, is this is not the image that I want. That's a very alienating image, but the redemptive part of it is I don't have to catch it alone. Right? So there's a little bit of feedback, so I'm just going to suggest that if we're not talking, we mute and then come back in as soon as you'd like to. We looked at the Exodus text, we looked at the Rashi text, and now I'm going to move us a little bit forward. The reason why this last text is on the page is because usually when we think about the receiving of Torah, we say this part of it, right? When the Torah was offered, called into the ears, into the hearing of all the people, all of us said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it and then we'll hear, which is much sweeter than the actual text above was. I just like holding that in contrast. This is a text that Mark pointed to before we got here. Mark's still here? I'm looking around. I don't see you, but thank you for bearing the lead, as it were. This is one of the most famous stories.
There.
Oh, there you are, Mark. Okay, good. You want to read it?
No, I leave that to.
All right. Well, you channeled it. You get all the credit, but I'll do the reading. Okay. So the Torah says Moshe brought forth the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood b'tachtit ahar. They stood at the base of the mountain. Right? Rabbi Avdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa said the Jewish people actually stood beneath the mountain, and the verse teaches that the Holy Blessed One overturned the mountain above them like a tub, or a casket, or a beer barrel, and said to them, if you accept the Torah, excellent. And if not, there will be your burial. I'm looking at Peter saying, not such a birth moment, right? Right? Rabbi Acha and there's a lot to say about that. Were we having a conversation on parenting and we were all like unburdening our worries, I think I'd have a lot to say. And as I'm talking about the blessed burden of being a parent, I just wanted to acknowledge that the beautiful person who has helped make me a parent just walked into the room. My daughter's right over here. Rabbi Acha Bar Yaakov said, from here, there's a caveat to the obligation to fulfill the Torah. The Jewish people can say that they were coerced into accepting the Torah, and therefore it's not binding. If there's any lawyers in this group, right? So I say, here, do you accept this? If not, I'm dropping a mountain on your head. It's literally coercive. There's no free will involved in that. Marcy, I'm thinking about what you said before, right? There's no active free will if the mountain's over my head. The only way to make that a little bit better is if I can think like Zachary. It's not over my head as a threat. It's stretching down so that I can accept it. But the way the rabbis originally described this, they say God held the mountain over the Israelites' head and said, do you accept the Torah? If yes, we're good to go. If not, you're done. That's not fair. So again, why do the rabbis tell this? So look where it goes. Even so, they again accepted it, meaning the Jewish people accepted the Torah during the time of Achashverosh, which should have actually been called the time of Esther. As it is written, the Jews ordained and took upon themselves and upon their seed upon all as such joined themselves unto them, meaning kimu v'kiblu, that's the Hebrew. They accepted the Torah one more time. The Jews accepted what they'd already taken upon themselves through coercion at Sinai. So just for a second, I'm taking the text away. I want to just look at you. So here's one question. Remember what I said. How we remember, how we see the image at Sinai might be based on what we're choosing to remember. There was an image of holding the mountain over the head. There was an image of standing as a huge group facing something terrifying. There was an image of a popsicle land, right? Everybody's smiling. There's an image also of reaching for Torah, floating in the air. Did it feel at any point when we were talking about it like it looks in your mind's eye when you think about Sinai? Because as we're about to begin Musaf in just a few minutes, what's the image that you see? Is it coercive? Are we returning to some power disparity relationship with God? Is it shiny and sweet? What speaks to you, if anything, from these images that we are looking at? I'm going to give you the images one more time. Here's floating Torah with reaching hands. Here's popsicle sweetness. Here's, I don't know what to call it. Here's something. I'll make it a little bit bigger so we can look at it and not call it anything. It's something. And here's this. So what I want to do, and I only have a few minutes to do it, is share with you one of the ways that I've processed the giving of Torah through midrashic understanding, in a way that not only have I come to peace with it, but I have fallen in love with it again. And it has to do with the Sinai moment, but it's a different way of feeling. Maybe a combination of what we've all been sharing fits into it well. The Torah is given and we stand at the base of the mountain, and the Midrash then says not only at the base but underneath, and it was pressurized and unfair. The radical suggestion the rabbis are making that the Torah isn't binding because it wasn't fair is mind-blowing to me that the rabbis go there. And that to suggest that the image is like this, the Kabbalists have a different image that they come to. And here's the last image that I'm going to share with you. This is by a phenomenal, phenomenal artist, Yoram Ra'anan. If you know his artwork, you're blessed. And if not, I encourage you to look up Yoram Ra'anan when it's not Yom Tov. He's an Israeli artist whose studio actually was burned down about 10 years ago. And then he rededicated himself to creating his sacred art. There's a book of his artistic interpretations of every Torah portion. It's a great coffee table book, very inspiring. This one is at Sinai. And it's clearly so different from the other ones. But I want to tell you what he based his image on. It's a Kabbalistic reinterpretation of the reinterpretation. So imagine this. We stood at the base of the mountain underneath, and the mountain was over our heads. The Kabbalists say, that's true. But God was under the mountain with us, not on top of it. God stood under the mountain with us and said, I love you so much. I'm going to give you a ketubah. I'm going to give you a contract that binds us to each other. We're going to call that Torah. So stand under the light with me and make a promise like I'm making to you. That's what Yoram Ra'anan is doing. Is any of it literally true? I have no idea if even the Torah's text is literally true. I'm less interested in that. I'm not interested in remembering what actually happened. What I'm interested in doing is opening up my heart so that my process of remembering is infused by meaning making and relationship making and imagining a world worthy of all of this interpretive process. Peter, I really, as soon as you said it now, I can't help but look at you when I'm saying this. Like, my children are standing under that mountain with me. It not only gives me comfort, it gives me faith. And, you know, Rabbi O and I both talked about hope accidentally. Like, we didn't know that we both were going to do that. It gives me hope to imagine that God is standing under that mountain with me. It's an overwhelming experience. But I'm supposed to be in charge of my children's lives, and I don't know what I'm doing. None of us ever do. But I made a promise. I'm under that mountain. So if God, we're going to sing tomorrow, we don't get to do it on Shabbat, right? Avinu Malkeinu, our parent, is under that mountain with me. I've got my ima, my Abba to lean on. I have my children leaning on me. And ultimately, we're one circle of leaning on each other. Because the one thing about that image that we can find meaning in, but it's very scary, the mountain over my head, if I'm all alone, I don't know what to do. I can choose what to do, thank God, but I don't know what to do because Lo tov hayot adam levado. We're told in Genesis, it's better to be together. Billy Joel said it really well. I think I shared this when we learned together the shofar, right? He says, they're sharing a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. Right? It's a nice image, right? Not the drinking part, although that's okay. It's just good to be together. So I wanted to wish you an ongoing gorgeous Rosh Hashanah. I want to share with you my gratitude for being part of your community. And we'll see each other at Musaf in just a moment or two. Thanks for learning with me. Can't wait to see you soon. Shana Tova, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Creditor.
Thank you, Yashikah.
I just want to remind everybody to get back into Musaf. You're going to go to the website and click on the link for Musaf, and that will take you right